just found something out. Apparently, not everyone on the planet is as big of a fan of the Cyclones as I am, and some people genuinely think that Iowa can defeat Iowa State this upcoming weekend in Jack Trice. Is Ty Hildenbrandt of the Solid Verbal Podcast one of those people? We're going to find out today on Locked On Cyclones.
You are Locked On Cyclones, your daily podcast on the Iowa State Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Shout out to you for being here every single day, making this your first watch or listen of the day. I appreciate it more than you know. It's Cyhawk week, and we got to break down this game with a very special guest today. Ty Hildenbrandt of the Solid Verbal Podcast joins me to give me the ins and the outs from his perspective. Who's going to win this game and how? Very important. And honestly, a can't miss bonus episode here. Can't wait to dive into all of that and more. Be sure to hit subscribe down below. We're proving that it is, in fact, a Cyclone State. It's completely free. Before we get that far, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is around the corner. Visit FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now. That being said, all right, Ty Hildenbrandt of the Solid Verbal joining us today. Very, very exciting guest to break down the Cyhawk game, because this is one of the biggest rivalries, I think, this week and all across college football. Ty, I'm just going to start here. What have you seen from Iowa State and maybe Iowa as well? But going into this game, where do you put Iowa State at? Maybe not power rankings wise, but just feel wise.
The feel question's a really good question for Iowa State right now, isn't it?
Yes.
Because I've been pretty high on this team over the years, and I find that on occasion, as I'm sure you know full well, they leave you a bit wanting. You know there is more there, but for one reason or another, there's a dumb loss, there's a dumb mistake. They just can't get over that hump. Now, last year, as you know, was like the best year in the history of the program, so they got over one hump, but I think the next one obviously is winning something, being part of the playoff. I mean, they're set up really well for that this year. And I kind of expected that they would have a little bit more trouble last week, not because South Dakota is a team that should beat Iowa State, but because they were coming off of that big win, the rivalry win in Ireland. It was a short week. South Dakota, at least by FCS standards, is not a bad team by any stretch. Just seemed like that would be the kind of game that, maybe they'd be looking past and having the Cyhawk game come up. Obvious look-ahead spot. We didn't see that at all. I mean, they pounded South Dakota. And what I like about this team is the fact that there is a really strong veteran presence. It would be more helpful to know exactly who the weapons were going to be out wide longer term, as again, I know I'm singing to the choir here, but beyond all that stuff, just the way that they went out in week 0, I guess, in this case, away from home in Ireland and got that win, a close win. I think that showed a lot of resilience. And what they did last week was reassuring to me that, September hasn't always been kind to Matt Campbell. The fact that now they were able to get through a game like that, which is seemingly meaningless in the grand scheme of things, that sets them up pretty well. So I think feels are pretty good, but, obviously the season's in front of them, so we'll see what comes next.
Yeah, vibes are definitely high. The South Dakota game was one that I had kind of circled. Obviously, Matt Campbell talked all offseason about how tough the return from Ireland was going to be. And I do want to ask you really quickly, because I think it's been a big topic of conversation this week. Kansas State did not handle the return nearly as well. And I think there is a lot of value in that win over Kansas State and Ireland. But I think a lot of people are kind of questioning, maybe, is Kansas State all that good? Where do you kind of put yourself? Is it that was the travel? Or was that maybe Kansas State isn't quite the Big 12 contender we thought?
I've been leaning more on the side of they're not as good as I thought, because I picked them to win the Big 12 and go to the playoff. And again, I don't think there's any shame in losing to Iowa State, especially abroad, right? That's a different situation than most teams are used to. So I get that, and that in and of itself isn't a black eye. You lose game 1, as we've seen just in the limited sample we have now of this 12-team field. You can go places even if you lose early. But yeah, the return trip, the game against North Dakota, just really left a bad taste in my mouth. And time will tell if that's a travel thing. Time will tell if it's more of an indicator for where Kansas State is at as a team. But definitely one of those things that made me sit up a little bit in my seat and wonder, like, all right, what are we dealing with here in reality?
Yeah, and I think to Iowa State's kind of point here, for all that, obviously a lot of Cyclone fans listening to this, I think once Iowa State kind of got over maybe the first game overseas jitters and through the rain, I think Iowa State dominated that second half. I think that they could have maybe put up 35 points if they didn't fumble on the one, and obviously kneeling on the one, a great way to end the game, but it makes the score look slightly closer than it was. So I do think Iowa State has momentum going into this Cyhawk game. And you talk about the offense. I think that the weapons is a very valid question with no Higgins or Knoll. That was one of the biggest talking points this whole offseason. We've seen Iowa State go to this 12, 13 personnel at a ridiculous rate. I believe this is correct. PFF said that they were the number one through the first 2 weeks as far as usage rate goes. Iowa is number 2, which is pretty much right on par. Do you think that Iowa State needs to use wide receivers to beat Iowa, or can they split out Bramer and Burkle kind of like they have as wide receivers, those 6'7" huge targets outside? We've seen that be successful in the first 2 weeks, but this is a different situation. Do we need to use Sowell? Do we need to use Townsend? Does Eskelson have to show up to beat Iowa?
Well, it's funny you bring this up because when we did our preview, I remember saying to my co-host Dan that this is a little bit reminiscent of like the halcyon days of Chaz Kohler and Chase Allen, right? Where they would use that personnel to great effect. And, I just think it's less about what they need to do in order to win and more about, I think, the coaching staff understanding the personnel. And at least for now, where there is this sort of void, and I'm even hesitant to call it that, but you lose 2 receivers of that caliber, 2 1,100-yard receivers, there's going to be a hole until you can figure out who can step up. Now, I think Rocco Beck has handled it pretty well. Rocco Beck has very much looked in control and has given a veteran presence to that offense. So regardless of who the targets are out wide, I feel pretty confident about where he is at in leading the team. But, I'm just encouraged by the fact that they're able to kind of supplement what they lost with big tight ends or some other way to skin the cat, right? Like they've been pretty good at doing that. So what do they need to do to beat Iowa? I mean, that's sort of like the big question. I think personally, just from like a defensive standpoint, if they can avoid Mark Gronowski. Now, Mark Gronowski threw for 44 yards last week.
I was going to ask you.
Threw for 44 yards. I was all in on Mark Gronowski before the start of the year. He threw for 44 yards. And like, I'm looking at myself in the mirror for 15 minutes the other day, wondering, am I going nuts here? But look, if part of Mark Gronowski's appeal has been that he's a dual threat guy, he's sort of a bowling ball with the football. At his previous stop, they did a lot of the thing where they would drop him back. He would take a step like he's going to throw a pass, and then he would run for it directly up the middle looking for contact. And so my whole theory of this game before what we saw last week, mind you, was they're going to do a lot of that against Iowa State. They're going to do a lot of that because Iowa State's got some questions in the secondary coming into the season. And, if they can kind of keep those guys in the back on skates, there might be opportunities to go over the top. Well, that whole theory kind of got blown to smithereens a week ago. I mean, he looked horrible. He really genuinely looked horrible in that game. And so who's to say if it was jitters, if it was game 1 type stuff, that they'll get that sorted out in advance of the Cyhawk game? I don't know. But I think where I'm going with this is, for me, it starts up front on defense. Not so much what they need to do offensively. I think we expect it's going to be a tight game. This generally is a tight game. But I think they can really cut the legs out from Iowa if they can win that point of attack when they're on defense. And if there is any threat of Gronowski doing Gronowski things like we saw at his previous stop, if they can win that line of scrimmage, and if they can prevent him from, going on some of these runs, I think that puts them at a much more advantageous spot. I don't know how Iowa moves the ball, right? It's sort of the question with the Iowa Hawkeyes. How are they going to move the ball? And if they don't have a threat of any kind of verticality because the quarterback is setting something up with his run game, I've been all in on Iowa since back to when we did our previews. But after what I saw last week, I'm going to stick with it. However, I'm not going to lie. I've definitely been a lot less confident in that prediction.
Yeah, I don't think we're in the same camp as far as being on Iowa's side. We'll keep chatting with Ty here about the future of Iowa State and some of the craziest things that could happen in this Cyhawk game right here after this. College football is back, and I could not be more excited. Cyhawk this weekend is going to be electric. The tailgates, the rivalries like Cyhawk, the energy in the stands, there's nothing like it. But let's be real, actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout, and that's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. I love the zone deals personally. You pick the section, Game Time picks the seats, and you save big. My personal favorite feature is by far the ability to see the exact view from my seat. That sets it apart. I need to see exactly what I am looking at in my seat. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Today's episode is also brought to you by Upside. Hey, Cyclone fans, are you still paying full price for gas? Stop leaving money behind. Get real cash back every single time you fill up with the free Upside app. Simply download the free Upside app in the App Store or Google Play right now and start earning cash at the pump today. Use my limited time promo code FOOTBALL and get an extra 25 cents back per gallon on your first fill up. You could make up to $300 a year just from buying the gas you already needed. At first, I thought it was too good to be true, but it's totally legit. Real people are getting paid just to make their daily commutes, and you can too. Plus, you can cash out anytime to your bank account, PayPal, or an e-gift card for Amazon and other brands. Don't let this offer drive on by. Download the free Upside app now using my limited time promo code FOOTBALL for a limited time 25 cent per gallon bonus. That's promo code FOOTBALL. Offers vary by user and location. Go to upside.com for terms and conditions. I will revisit that in a second because I have a few points there, but I have a bit of something I'm going to throw at you here. This came up a few days ago when Mauser had some press conference availability, and a few quotes stood out to me. So I'm curious I'm going to make my kind of assumption of what he said, and I'm curious how you think this will impact the game. Mauser had really high praise for Rocco, which is totally standard. That is not surprising at all. Talked about how he's better when we put him in tough positions, ask a lot of him. When we dumb it down, he doesn't play as well. Then he also talked about his learning from last season as the OC and learning that you can't always put together a super methodical drive. Sometimes you kind of have to take risks. I put those two together and said, there's a chance that we see some risky play from Iowa State in this one. I think that it's not going to be your typical super slow. This has been my prediction over the course of the week, even before this is going to be a high scoring game. I know that everybody loves the under in this one, and I do as well. I've seen the history, but I wonder if it's going to be a 44-47 final or something ridiculous. If Iowa State chooses to go with risky play calls, will that hurt them more than it will help them? Or is it actually better for them to play kind of slow and a little bit safer?
I'd prefer that they try to open it up, to be honest.
I think so too.
I mean, that would be the story of the weekend. If these two teams combine for 80 points, that would be awesome.
That would be
sign me
cool.
up. Sign me up for that.
For it.
I hope that they do that. I mean, part of my beef with Iowa State last year was I had hope that the ground game would be a little bit more explosive. Like, we could talk about Rocco Becht, and obviously he had more notable pass catchers a year ago.
Yeah.
But the thing that I found most disappointing about that team was that they weren't more explosive in the run game. And, the good backs. I mean, Abu Samo's a bowling ball, same deal with Carson Hansen, and they were both very good around the goal line. But in terms of breaking off those bigger, more explosive runs, that was an issue. And so, and again, to further the point, we didn't really see a whole lot of that, at least in game one against Kansas State. It wasn't, again, an explosive ground attack. They were able to use it, but it wasn't quite where I would want it to be to feel better about them kind of opening up everything. I think you need that component in order to really balance out your offense and give yourself more of a better risk profile if you're going to start doing play action, trying to throw stuff over the top. I would like to see a little bit more of that. But that being said, like, this is an Iowa team that, yes, it returns a lot, but I think you can take some chances because there frankly is an open question now as ever about the offense. And so if you're in a good position, if you're second and short, if you're on the right side of the 50 and you decide to air one out or get a little bit riskier with it, what is the harm truly in throwing an interception at the 19-yard line? Obviously, you don't want that. You don't want that, but if we're talking about a game that's probably going to be dominated by punts anyway, what's the harm? So I'm with you. I'd love to see it. I would love to see it, and I think they've got the quarterback to do it, whether it's to tight ends or to another target. I would just like to – I would feel better about that plan if I knew that there was a run game that really posed a serious threat, of being explosive.
Yeah, the run game is, I think, probably of the two, the weaker for Iowa State. And I think I say that just because of how strong the pass game is. You mentioned Iowa State's secondary, and there I kind of want to pivot a little bit towards Iowa. Not that I shouldn't say I want to. I don't want to. I don't want to talk about them.
You're on an Iowa State show, man. Be careful.
It's only for the fans. It has to be done. Mark Gronowski, you mentioned it. Just terrible. There's no other way to put it. But they 310 yards on the ground is kind of ridiculous. It's pretty much on par for Iowa, but that's a lot of yards. I think Iowa State has the linebackers to shut that down. If they can stop that run, I see Iowa State winning this, and it's going to come down to the trenches, of course. What can Dom Orange do? What can Tomato McDonough do? If Iowa State shuts down the run, hypothetically speaking, do they win this game? Like, to me, yes. So.
Yeah, yeah. But
it's like not even a good question.
Yeah, it's a hard yes. Because, again, look, I'll just revisit this for a second, okay? I watched every clip of Mark Gronowski on the internet before the start of the year. Every single clip.
Okay, I see before. There you go.
Yeah, before, not your eyes will bleed if you watched last week. I watched every clip before the season about Mark Gronowski, and I was all in on this guy. And what we saw last week was not good, Nick. It was horrible. And so, like, my whole theory of this was, they can use him. They can put him in situations that we haven't seen Iowa quarterbacks succeed. They can really play off this. It does kind of lend itself to what Tim Lester wants to do with getting a little bit more vertical in the passing game. And it just, like, conceptually, it made a lot of sense. But it's not going to work if we get that version of him. And to your point, if they stop the run, and if you're now forcing that version of Gronowski into throwing situations, what confidence should anyone have that he can get the job done? I mean, it was just bad. So maybe we will have more information the next time we chat about what this game ends up being. And maybe, no team is in week one what they're going to be in week 2 and beyond. I mean, everybody shows some improvement, generally speaking. So maybe it was jitters, or I don't know. I'm just making stuff up here. But at time of recording, let's say this, if they stop the run, they're going to win.
That's good news, because that's been the one thing that I have been apprehensive of, is I do think Iowa State's secondary has given up, in my opinion, too many deep shots. Against South Dakota, they were clearly targeting the deep ball, and it's totally fair. I think we saw that against Kansas State. Iowa State shows some weakness there, but if Iowa State can get out early, get Bramer in the end zone, maybe throw an end around, a little bit of a bubble route, if you will, to Hansen or something, get in, force Iowa to throw. If you think that, and I am totally in the same boat, that Gronowski can't handle the heat in the kitchen, that's right where Cyclone fans, I think, want to be. And we're not even going to touch on special teams. Weejan, I think we're just going to kick away from him. I think that there's a chance that Iowa kicks away from Flora. He's a weapon as well. While I've got you here, and all the Cyclone fans are curious, is Iowa State a Big 12 title contender at this point, and could they make it to the college football playoff?
Yes, absolutely. The Big 12 is wide open. And I think what we saw, it's a ton of fun to watch. I love it. I love it, especially towards the end of the season, towards the end of last season, when there was like a 6-way tiebreaker,
and Kansas comes just wrecking through.
Yeah, and you're trying to figure out, like, all right, how does this all work? There's a random dude who built like a script to kind of work it all out. I mean, it's nuts. It's great. This is what it's supposed to be. Yes, they're a contender. They're absolutely a contender. I mean, especially with how they beat up on Kansas State. As you said, it was a close game, but I tend to agree with you that the final score was not all indicative of the tenor of that game, at least down the stretch. But between Iowa State, Arizona State, who's got a tough game, I think, at least if you believe point spreads this weekend on the road, Utah made a statement this past weekend against UCLA. Who knows? I mean, the UCLA conversation's its own podcast, but Utah's another one of those teams. I mean, we could probably go 5 or 6 deep just with respect to, and even a team like a K-State could bubble up down the stretch. I mean, this is a conference that now has definitely a brand for being wide open, but Iowa State's in there. And the fact that they've got a veteran presence at quarterback, I think the fact that they've got a stable of running backs that they feel good, maybe not as explosive as I would like, but clearly they know how to use that. And the fact that you've got a defense that you generally can trust in, even if there are some questions about the secondary. John Haycock's been pretty good at this for a long time. You tend to give him benefit of the doubt that he's going to figure it out. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been bullish on Iowa State pretty much every year. I wasn't as bullish on them this year, and they beat K-State to start the year. So yeah, listen, I would be the happiest guy, not being an Iowa State fan or any connection to the university, but just as somebody who follows this and really enjoys Big 12 football, I would be over the moon if Iowa State were able to get over that hump and find their way into the title game and maybe win it.
Oh, absolutely. I know if they're down in it's Jerry World, I think still, right? Dr. Pepper Bowl. I'll definitely be there. I've got one more for you, and you can take this however you want. You can go score prediction, or I kind of want to get a really bold prediction out of you, because this is, everyone wants to say 17-14 final. It's going to be a slugfest. That's what this series has been, this rivalry, and that's what makes it so great. And I adore this game every single year. I circle it. It's early in the year. It's fall weather. It's just perfect. Okay. But I want to go a little bit off script. I think this could be a high flying affair. I think this could be an 80-point game across the board, or Iowa State wins it by 30. Those are my two kind of bold predictions. If it's not typical, what happens in this game?
If it's not typical, Mark Kardowski would throw for 400 yards.
Oh my!
Iowa would have a quarterback. I mean, if you want to talk about things that are truly atypical,
yeah,
it would be Iowa's quarterback going for like 300 yards, them actually showing some sort of vertical passing attack,
some competency in some way through the air.
Yeah. I mean, that would be the ultimate zag. But again, given what we saw last week, that might just be wishful thinking on the Iowa side. I think, bigger picture, like on the Iowa State side, what is atypical on the Iowa State side? I think that would be, to your earlier point, them scoring 40 points, them just blowing up Iowa, them not having any difficulty, and this not being the close game that everybody expects. That to me seems like the obvious answer. If we find there's a situation in this game where an Iowa defense that typically does not give up big plays is suddenly giving up big chunk plays with somewhat regularity. Maybe it's through the passing game because of play action, or maybe it's just Abu Sama breaking off like he did 2 years ago, in some of these longer runs. I don't know, but I think a situation where Iowa's giving up a bunch of chunk plays would probably be very different from what we're used to seeing out of this matchup.
I absolutely think Iowa State's capable of it. And really it'll come down to, is it Iowa that stinks this year, or is Iowa State on the trajectory to scoring 45 points a game and dominating the Big 12? Ty, thank you so much for joining us and really enlightening everyone with your thoughts. The Solid Verbal puts out some really, really solid stuff. Where can everybody listen and get involved? Because you guys have some opportunities to get involved on the podcast, right?
We do. First off, thank you for the invite. I greatly appreciate it. And for anybody who's not familiar with my show, you can find us at solidverbal.com. Any podcast app, just look for the Solid Verbal. We have 3 episodes a week. We do a live stream every Saturday night at midnight to recap all the action. We have a Tuesday show. We have a Thursday show as well. And solidverbal.com, again, is the site if you want to find out more about us. But anywhere you get your podcasts, we're out on YouTube, the works.
Perfect. Well, you heard it here first, folks. Ty says Iowa State's winning by 80 points.
That's it, man.
Can't wait to see it.